What's up, internet? So I've been using and testing these controllers extensively for the past few weeks now. I've had the PS5 a little bit longer because I think this one came out first, and this one came with my Xbox Series X. And this is a tale of complete opposite philosophies of what makes a controller great. I can already see that opinions will be very divided on these controllers. Some folks will love this controller, and others will prefer this one. So which one is better for you? Let's dive in. Let's start with the build quality. They are both very well built. Sony's controller feels more premium to me, and I'll tell you why. So first, immediately you notice that the buttons here have this glass finish to them. Not sure if you can see this. It's a see-through plastic where you can see the logos underneath. It just makes it look cool, you know? And also, the plastic itself is a smooth finish versus the Xbox Series controllers is a matte finish. And with it being matte, it leaves a lot of fingerprints and scratches and marks on here. And the quality of the plastic itself, the PlayStation 5 controller feels a lot sturdier and thicker. Okay? Whereas with the Xbox One, it's a little bit thinner and hollower. And the DualSense controller just feels heavier than the Xbox controller. The same cannot be said about the thumbsticks. The Xbox thumbstick just looks and feels great. I really dig the little grooves that they have all around here. It's really nice. Compare that with the PS5's thumbsticks. This just feels janky, to be honest with you. The thumbsticks on the PS5 controller just feel cheap in comparison. So in terms of build quality, I say the PS5 has a more premium look and feel to it, but it does cost you $10 more. Let's talk about how these controllers fit in your hands. Now with the PS5, you hold it like this, right? I kind of don't like the way that they curve this in kind of too inward, right? Whereas with the Xbox, you see how my hand is just straight. You see that? You see my wrist? It's just natural, right? There's not really any twisting of the wrist. Whereas with the DualSense, because this one is a little bit more vertical, there's quite a bit of a bend to the wrist. So it's not as natural in terms of how the controller feels in your hand. Next, let's talk about how do the buttons actually feel when you press them. The buttons on the PS5 controller is very soft. I don't mean soft as in easy to press, but soft as in very quiet. Okay, I'll show you. Can't really hear it. This is great if you have other people in the room and you don't want your controller to make too much noise. And on the opposite end of that, the Xbox controller, it's very clicky. Check that out. Yep, they know you're playing games. Personally, I prefer the clicky and tactile feel of these buttons a lot more than the soft and quiet PS5 controller buttons. One comparison that I can give you is, you know how you use keyboards that are mechanical versus dome-based keyboards? So the PS5 controller, when you press the buttons, they just feel like you're pressing on a plastic dome. And with the Xbox controllers, the buttons feels like there is a switch underneath. Like when you press them down, there's a click. You can really feel the button actuates. We've already talked about the thumbsticks. These are not good. I mean, I guess they're okay if you get used to them, but I much prefer the thumbsticks on the Xbox. Look at this, it doesn't go anywhere, it's not slippery at all. Check this out. So if you play a lot of first-person shooters or games that require a lot of use of the thumbsticks, the Xbox controller is the way to go. With the PS5 thumbsticks, look, it feels like it's trying to get away from me. Yeah, these thumbsticks are not very good at all. I feel this area here of the controller is prime real estate for the primary input method. What do I mean by that? I feel that Sony prioritizes the D-pad, so they put it here so it's more easily accessible. You see how my thumb just naturally rests over there? And the same thing can be said about the Xbox. See, the Xbox prioritizes the thumbstick, and you can tell. See, this is so natural, right? Whereas with the D-pad, it's a little awkward, right? You gotta move your thumb. If you want to press forward, you gotta kind of reach, you know what I mean? I mean, you get used to it, but this is secondary. This is a secondary area, whereas this is the primary input method, right? And you can also tell that with the PlayStation controller. This is secondary. I guess this goes back to the inception of the PlayStation. You gotta remember when the first PlayStation came out, 2D games were still popular. In fact, the original PlayStation controller didn't even have joysticks, right? So them focusing on the D-pad and the face buttons makes perfect sense. And that kind of carried through the generations, right? Whereas with the Xbox, when the original OG Xbox came out, the games are already 3D, right? The killer app is Halo. It's a first-person 3D shooter, right? So having good 3D movement with the thumbsticks is crucial. And I don't care what anybody says, that Duke controller is amazing. Alright, let's talk about the D-pads. This D-pad is a pretty big improvement over the Xbox One's D-pad. And I really like the Xbox One's D-pad. Hitting this D-pad is just so satisfying with the sound that it makes and the tactility that you feel. Compare that with the DualShock, this is as far from tactile as you can get actually. It's very mushy. And also, there's something to be said about audio feedback. You practically cannot hear the button presses at all. So if I drop a combo or something, I'm not sure if it's me or the controller. Did I not press the button hard enough, or did the game eat my inputs? There's no way for me to tell on the fly. With the Xbox D-pad, you know exactly what you're doing. I was looking at some teardown screenshots for both the DualSense and the Xbox Series X controller, and this is what I found. So here's the D-pad, and you can see there's this plastic rubber thing underneath it. And if you lift that piece up, you can clearly see that these are dome-based switches. Here's a shot of what's underneath the Xbox Series X D-pad. As you can see, these switches are metal, right? Look at that, no wonder why they're so clicky. While DualSense has a more premium look and feel on the exterior, the Xbox Series controllers actually have more premium components inside of the controller. I struggle with quick double taps on the DualSense controller. I mean, I have to press it really hard. And because the buttons are dome-based, they don't spring up as quickly as the Xbox Series X controller. Right, look at that. It's a more sluggish process. In terms of the diagonal movement, I sometimes have trouble hitting forward and up at the same time, and also down back at the same time. And the reason being is the spaces between here are pretty big, right? So my finger, I have skinny fingers, it just doesn't have enough coverage to hit both of them consistently all the time. I try to do this and I'm only hitting forward or up. To be fair, I also have trouble with the up, forward, or 9 inputs on the Xbox Series controller. Sometimes it would just do up or forward. I think this is due to the fact that the D-pad on the Xbox is lower, and so to hit 9 you gotta kinda extend your thumb out a little bit, so that's why I'm having trouble. Other than that, I don't have any trouble with anything else. I feel like the Xbox controller It's better if you have smaller fingers or smaller thumb, and the DualSense controller is probably better if you have fat thumbs. I also find that doing circular motions on the Xbox controller, it's a lot more responsive and easier to do, right? Because this is kind of caved in, so you put your finger in the middle here and you're able to do all kinds of circular motions. Whereas with the DualSense, your finger or your thumb have to kind of slide around a lot more. Because it's sliding around a lot more, it gives you a better chance of missing the input. Now let's talk about comfort. As tactile and responsive as the D-pad is on the Xbox controller, after a long period of time, my thumb really hurts, right? And the main reason is this. You see how the cross shape that's carved out of this floating D-pad has really sharp edges. You see that? Especially when I use a lot of diagonal movements, these edges dig into my thumb. I form like calluses on my finger. So I don't recommend using this for hours on end. The DualSense has sharp edges too, but they're nowhere near as sharp. As strange as this sounds, because the D-pad uses dome switches, it's a lot more comfortable over long periods of time. I can play on this D-pad for much longer than I could with the Xbox controller. As of right now, I think Sony only has one color scheme for the DualSense controller. Whereas with Microsoft, if you're getting multiple controllers, you surely want different colors, right? Check out how sick this controller looks. I can already tell you that opinions on these two controllers will be very split. People who love this controller, they're gonna love it because it's gonna feel very exciting and new, right? From the adapter triggers to the way it looks. I mean, it just looks futuristic, right? And then the exterior material is also very premium looking as well. So this is an exciting controller. It's new, right? You got these RGB lights that lights up, it's fun, it looks new. But I'm not sure if they focus as much on the internal components of the controller and the actual gameplay experience. Personally, I'm not a fan of the rubber dome switches for the buttons. It just doesn't feel tactile enough. In fact, it's very mushy. So for those people who are looking for something new and some excitement, they're probably gonna like this controller a lot better, right? On the other hand, the Xbox controller is a try and true formula, right? Where it counts is the internals. Microsoft focused on the gameplay and responsiveness of the controller. So Microsoft had a different philosophy in terms of how to improve the controller. Microsoft took their existing Xbox One controller, which is already a great controller, and improved every single aspect of it to make the actually playing the games better and more responsive. Hopefully you found this video to be informative, and let me know which controller you prefer. And as always, like and subscribe for more. Have a good one.